Trigger warning on this episode: it discusses in detail and at some length suicide and topics around suicide. People, I don't know. It's a weird thing. We're recording, by the way.
That's okay.
People like to. It's not like to look at themselves. It's a fascination thing, isn't it? I think it's because being able to look at yourself on a screen is still relatively new technology in the history of like humankind.
Human evolution.
We've only had it around. We've only had the ability to do it for what 100 years.
Yeah.
100 years.
And live, in the last how long? Not very long, is it?
No, yeah. Have you ever watched any of the old movies?
The black and white 1930s type stuff.
Before.
Yeah, where it's just the silent movie stuff.
Silent movie stuff.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever watched Nosferatu?
No, I don't think.
Oh my god! I went through a stage a few years ago. I say a few years ago, must have been 7, 8, 9 years ago now. Of watching old school shit. I don't know why I'm doing it. And one of them was Nosferatu. Nosferatu was, I think, is 1923 or 1917, right? And I'm going to bring it up on the screen. When you see this, when you see the character, you will know exactly what I'm on about. Nosferatu stairs, right? Watch this. You know this, right? With the shadow of the creepy guy that says the long fingers.
Yeah.
Right. Nosferatu was 1922. There it was made. Nosferatu was It was made in 1922. Then it's basically a rip-off of Dracula, right? And when they made it, whoever it was at the time who did films and shit, kind of people said, "This is a rip-off of Dracula. No, get it in the bin." And they basically got archived. They did nothing with it. It didn't get published. It didn't get put out into. We didn't have cinemas then. Anyway, it didn't get released, right? And I think it was the 40s. I think it was during the Second World War, and they uncovered in some archive somewhere this film. And like, what is this? And they I was going to say they put it on there. They didn't put it on the TV. They
got the reel out.
Yeah. They chucked it in the Blu-ray, and they watched it, and they're like, "This is awesome." And they released Nosferatu 20 years after it was made, and it is amazing. It is proper good, and it's the only rip-off of Dracula that is. It's a vampire, and that's it. Yeah. And then the other one is Metropolis. You must have seen Metropolis.
Was it years ago?
That is one of the wildest films I've ever watched. Wild. That's the one. It's a silent movie.
Yeah, silent.
Proper silent movie where you'll see a depiction. The characters are doing something on screen. Then it'll switch to. Then the next scene is literally just a picture of the words that they were supposed to be saying, and then it shows some more movement. But it's the one where it's a story of a rich guy in a big city, a son of a rich guy, very well, upper class, loaded. His dad runs the city, but the city, the thing that makes the city live and keeps it all going and keeps all the mechanicals and all that working and the petrol pumps going, all that shit, is all done by the working class, and they all work underground constantly, and they can only go down big lifts, and they're underground, and they manhandle this massive machinery underground. But it's science fiction at the time that they did it. I think that was 1923. Unreal.
Science fiction, but ...
Yeah. And it's about him. It's about him realizing, as I recall, this isn't right. They shouldn't be living like this. But he goes down to join them to work, and then it's fucking crazy. But there's like robots and stuff in it. It is a crazy movie.
I have seen that, but it was a very, very long time ago.
I need to watch it again.
Yeah.
I've been trying to convince the missus to watch it. I'm spinning it. I'm spinning it to her, and she's like, "No fucking way! It sounds rubbish. It sounds rubbish." Yeah.
Cool.
What are the other old ones?
I grew up on the old, all the comedy Charlie Chaplin's and Laurel and Hardy.
I've never watched any Charlie Chaplin.
Oh yeah,
I've never watched any of it. I've watched the segment from the Dictator.
Right.
The Great Dictator. Is that the film? Where it's the monologue where he's... Have you ever seen that monologue where he's... machine men with machine minds? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah, it's a
cracking... It's a... I don't know, I'll try and pull it up, actually.
You've got a better memory than me.
We've got the right
I'm talking 40 years ago I watched these.
I know, but let's pull this up. 1 second.
Yeah.
I've only recently had this ability to pull something up on the screen like this. I'm gonna use it and abuse it. So Chaplin... dictator speech. I think it's only a minute or so long. Hang on. Get this. I have to watch this. Oh, here we go. This, have you seen this?
Yes.
Oh, let's watch it. Come on.
Energy saving grill busters at Curry's. This Samsung Series 5 11 kilo washing machine with Space Max and heat
No,
pump.
thank you.
I'm sorry.
Why isn't it on there?
My business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls. Has
What a
barricaded
film.
the world with hate.
I need to watch all of
Has
this.
goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed.
What an actor.
We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical. Our cleverness hard
And
unkind.
relevant now.
Absolutely,
Relevant
those words
now.
are so relevant.
Too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world. Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the
Was
way
this in the
of human
30s,
progress.
before the
The hate
fascists
of
came into
men
power,
will
was it?
pass, and dictators
I think they were
die.
obviously coming. When
And the
was that
power they
filmed?
took from the
Let's have a
people
look.
will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives,
Loud
tell you
up.
what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men.
Amazing.
Machine men.
1940.
Machine minds and
Made
machine
1940.
hearts.
So Hitler's in power and he makes
He's doing
this.
some horrible stuff,
You
yeah.
are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate. Only the unloved hate. The unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery. Fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man. Not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power. The power to create machines. The power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. To make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the...
Should remake this. Remake it today.
Today, yeah.
Oh my god.
But it's amazing that lots of the silent actors, didn't they? They failed as soon as they came into speech on films. A lot of them couldn't talk very well,
Really?
and loads of them they've been absolute massive stars in
Oh, I
the
didn't know
silent
that.
movies, and then for whatever reason they weren't very good at projecting their voices, talking and acting. So they could,
Interesting.
and they all, loads of them, just in the 1920s went from being massive celebs to being absolutely nothing.
Kind of reminds me of the guy who played Darth Vader. The actual guy who was the body of Darth
Yes,
Vader.
yeah.
And he's a Bristolian. He had to be on set and say all the words, didn't he? Because all the actors had to respond to him.
Yes.
So he would do all the words of Darth Vader and deliver them as Darth Vader. And then when the films were released, all dubbed over with,
Yeah.
what's his name? Oh, God. James Earl
James Earl.
James Earl Jones?
Yes,
Is it James Earl Jones?
James Earl. Tears on.
James Earl. Yeah. Imagine Darth Vader with a Bristolian accent.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Goodness
Yeah.
me.
James Earl, American actor, James Earl Jones.
Goodness me.
Cool.
Right, that's that. Right on the tangent. How do we start that? Okay, where do we start? Pandemic. Yeah, you mentioned about before we start recording. Well, just before I start recording. So, in the lead up to the pandemic, your eldest,
Second eldest.
second eldest,
Yeah.
got diagnosed with autism.
So she'd been diagnosed, she was 19 in the lead up to the pandemic. She was diagnosed with autism when she was about 15. Oh, we'd struggled for years and years and years with some of her behaviours and stuff. And,
Like what?
Well, from the age of about 2, she would have a tantrum, and it was on a different scale to the other kids. Kind of throw herself at a wall or something. If she,
Jesus.
yeah. And we went to the doctors, went to the schools where she kind of grew up, and said, "Look, we're having this behavioural problems. What is it?" And they were like, "Oh, it's just terrible twos." And really, she really struggled with her emotions sometimes. Most loving, beautiful girl, so kind, so caring, and then she could just drop, and her emotions could get the worst of her. And she was diagnosed with dyslexia when she was 10, and that was us paying for it. We realised that her writing and her reading ability was worse than her 5-year-old brother. So it was like, okay.
How old was she?
She was
10.
10.
10.
So 10. And so we went for that. And little did we realise at the time that dyslexia it is common if you've got autism, high functioning autism. Anyhow, she was about her behaviour, the erratic behaviour, just kind of got worse, and she was 13, going through puberty, doing all that stuff, and she had a first suicide attempt, and she had between 13 and 15, she had a number of suicide attempts. Ended up in hospital, and we ended up under CAMS.
What brought on the first one?
It was just being unable to handle her emotions. It was simply, and when we didn't know at the time, God, we were in a family in crisis. We just didn't know which way to turn, and we got all the services involved. Social services, the education.
After the first attempt.
Yeah. Oh yeah. CAMS were involved.
There's no indication beforehand.
No, we knew her emotions were all over the place, but we didn't realise how all over the place they were. And we were under CAMS, or Em was under CAMS for 2 years, and we were, buggered as a family, quite frankly. We were just in emotion. I was working, but it was just trying to cope with that, the pressure of that, working, and impact on the other kids and stuff.
Tell people what CAMS is.
Child and adolescent mental health. It's the young people's mental health services. Under 18, you go into CAMS. Over 18, they kind of pass you into adult mental health. We live in Norfolk, and it was under special measures at the time. And then when she was about 15, we were really struggling. And one of our friends in the village, who's a retired psychiatrist, knew about our problems. We were quite open to people in the village and stuff. And she said, "Have you thought about autism?" And it's no. And she said, "Yeah." So this was kind of 2015. And she said, if you go back 20, 25 years, girls don't have autism or didn't have autism because they're very, very good at masking it. Very, very good at masking it. Whereas if a boy has autism, they really show it quite openly. But girls, they're cleverer than us. So they try and mask it.
So you did have it before 25 years ago, it just wasn't known.
It wasn't diagnosed, yeah. It was the medics just thought it was just a boy thing rather than a both sexes thing. And so we tried to get through the NHS. We said to CAMS, autism, we're interested. Could you have a look at autism? And they said, no, we don't think it's autism. But we then went to the National Autistic Society and did some kind of online assessments, us and our family, saying about Em's behaviour. And all of them indicated we should have a proper diagnosis. So we took her down to a place called...
How the fuck did CAMS not realise then? Or not think it was a...
They thought it... So they kind of spring it back. They thought it was us. They did think it was. As soon as I said I was in the military, they were just like, "Oh, you're a bad dad, basically, for being in the military," type thing. And
really?
Yeah, it was. Oh, he's been through some dodgy stuff. It must be all to do with dad. And we're going, well, hang on a minute. We've got a load.
The ignorance of that attitude.
It annoyed me a little bit at the time, and I think the annoying thing was that Em wasn't our only child. We've got 4 kids,
yeah.
And it was great when we really reached out for help, and we got social services involved. And I'm the last person to think that I'd ever have social services in my family. And the lady that came and round to us and helped us to start with, first thing she said is, "All your kids are open to us." We didn't know what that was, and it was like, shit, that means they're going to assess all our kids to see if we're suitable parents. And Linda, this social worker from Norfolk, she came to our house. She was a hard lady, really, really hard lady. She'd worked in some of the hard institutions, and she interviewed all our kids one by one. And I can remember we were, as a mum and dad, we were really struggling with that and really worried about what our future held. And she came after interviewing the last one. She came and gave us both a big hug and said, "You've got 3 kids there that are just normal. They're normally adjusted. You might not be perfect parents, but you're good parents. And then there's something different with them." And so CAMs were all over this, but it was all, oh, it must be the way we've treated her and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we went down to the National Autistic Society, Lorna Wing Centre in Bromley in Kent. It's one of 2 centres of excellence for autism assessment. Private, again, we had to pay for that. Thank goodness we could afford it. It just shows how, it's not fair. Society isn't fair.
Why wasn't the NHS an option? Because it was through CAMS.
It was through CAMS. We went to see our GP.
And they wouldn't do it.
They wouldn't do it. Yeah. So we went to see our GP, and our GP was lovely. And he said, "Look, the last person I tried to get an autism assessment through the NHS was going to take over 2 years."
I've heard the same recently.
And M was 15, and she
now, I think.
Yeah. So we reached out, as I say, to the National Autistic Society, and they took us in. Just a day's assessment down in Bromley in Kent. They had me and my wife went in with one doctor, and went in with another doctor. Had 3 hours separately talking about her life and her emotions and stuff. We went away for lunch, came back, and the 2 doctors got us together. Em was away with one of the other staff, and they just looked at us and said, "I don't know how you've coped, and I don't know how Em's coped for 15 years."
And this is 2 years after the first attempt?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is 2 years. This is when she was 15. Don't know how you've coped. More importantly, don't know how Em's coped with her. It's clear she's got high functioning autism, and then what was Asperger's syndrome, or that same, to most people, she could function absolutely fine, but then she would come back home and just need space, need time. And that's what we didn't realize before the diagnosis was, she'd go out to school, come back, and a simple request, "It's tea time. Can you come down and have a cup of tea, have your tea?" That could cause her to absolutely blow. Whereas once you're dealing with high functioning autism, you can phrase that question. Your tea's ready when you want it, so it gives her the option of not to come down. You're not putting demands on her. And God, after she was 15, we weren't perfect at all, but we learnt how to try and cope, and she learnt how to cope with it. Struggling to go into school, we got support from private education companies. She went into school, got some GCSEs. Went to art college. She was a fantastic artist. Went to art college in Dereham in Norfolk. Then she did a fitness apprenticeship. She loved fitness. It really helped with her autism. That just going to the gym and working out really took some of the pressure off her. And she also loved driving. I've never seen a girl work so hard to pass a driving test, because it just gave her the freedom. We live rurally in Norfolk and just be able to go out on the road. So, yeah, she was, and then. She was just working in our little community pub. I said I like beer earlier. We've got a lovely little pub. We all own it in the village. And she was working in there as the pandemic hit.
Oh, okay. While she was still in college?
She'd finished college. She'd finished her apprenticeship with a fitness training. It was only a level 2, just an initial step. She very much, typical autism, tries a bit of that, comes away, tries a bit of that, comes away. She was a fantastic artist, honestly. The stuff that I've got hanging, her art pieces hanging up at home are just incredible.
What was she in? Did she paint or did
paint?
She draw?
It was paint. I've got a piece of her she did for a GCSE. It's just a self-portrait of her, and it's about 2 foot by 3 foot. And when she died, it was hanging up in the headmaster's office at school, so we had to go back into her school. They'd kept all her old paintings and stuff because they were so good.
He had it in there. So when she painted it, he put it up there?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was only after she died that we realised that the school had still got it. And it's like, we went back to the school and said, "Please, have you still got those paintings?" She'd done a couple. And she did a brilliant one of Ian McKellen as well, and she'd even done some private commissions as well for people. So
wow,
she was an incredible artist. And the talent she got, she could never see it, but the talent she got was amazing.
What led to so you said she tried to take her own life a couple of times before succeeding.
Yeah.
What led to the second time?
It was just in terms of when she was 13 to 15, in that period.
Roller coaster without any autism or anything else.
Yeah,
for anyone.
It was just life. I think kids going through puberty without autism, with autism, just an absolute undiagnosed autism is a nightmare. And if you look at the government's the new cross-government suicide prevention strategy they launched 4 weeks ago, one of the key areas that they're looking at there and funding is support for people with autism, because there's a higher suicide rate in people with autism. So they're working on how to support that.
Did I know what the rate is?
Pardon?
Did I know what the rate is?
No, but they're looking into it. John Moores University are looking into it, but it is higher than a neurotypical age group. But autism features, I think there were 4 young people with autism, young mums as well, were the kind of target areas for the government's kind of cross-government suicide prevention strategy. But autism brings an increased risk of suicide. Which is, so you need to know where, and that's our story. That's the Three Dads story, is where to reach out for help. And that's hopefully where, if one person listening to this can say to their kid, their grandkid or whatever, I've heard this old bloke talking on your podcast, and they know where to reach out for help and try and get that suicide prevention support, then this interview has been massively worth it.
So when, so she's working at the pub in Dereham. I know Dereham. I've been to Dereham.
So Dereham's near Swanton Morley. Dereham, our village is about 20 miles west of there, near RAF Marham. And she was working in our community pub. We bought it in 2015-16 as a brilliant pub. Lots of real ale in there. Big beer festival every the first weekend in September. Lots and lots of beers.
Yeah.
So she was working in the pub, and the lockdown was coming, and we knew lockdown was coming. I was with work. I was planning with the local authorities and stuff, doing lots of planning now about what's going to happen. So we were talking about the pandemic.
Just gonna grab that milk.
Yeah, sorry. My nephew in Italy was at the heart of the epicenter of the pandemic. So he was watching people keel over in the streets. He was confined to his flat.
Oh, really? So
as a family, we were massively aware of what was going on around the world, and Em was getting worried about it. So this is now kind of a week before the Prime Minister announced lockdown. On the Monday morning, we start coughing in the house, and it's at the time if your family's coughing, you have to isolate. So we realised we've got to isolate, and I phone up work and say, yeah, we're isolating. Doesn't matter, I can still work from home. It really didn't matter for me. But Em was out at the gym at the time, and we phoned her up and said, Em, when you come back, we're coughing in the house, so you've got to isolate. And she put the phone down. She was angry, put the phone down, then phoned back about 10 seconds later and said, right, she kind of clicked into action. If you can't go out, I'll go and do a big Tesco shop for you. Bless her. So there's a 19-year-old coming back from the gym in a Gym Bunny kit, went to Tesco's, and she phoned me up halfway round, and Dad, I need some more money. She was always skint. She never...
Teenager, mate.
She was always skint. She's 19. But she never spent more than she got. She spent it all, put it like that. It always went. But so she was going around Tesco's, and I don't know if you remember, kind of mid-2020, mid-March 2020, they were talking about food hoarding and everyone doing all that sort of stuff. So there's Em in a Gym Bunny kit, and she has now got a big trolley load full of food. She goes up to the Tesco's aisle to pay, and this old couple stop her and say, what are you doing with that young girl? Why are you hoarding all that food?
Oh, God.
Don't give a chance to explain that, hang on, my mum and dad, the 6 of us in the house, mum and dad have just gone into isolation. I'm doing the food shop for us, me and my brother and my 2 sisters and mum and dad for the next week or so. And she paid for it, and she came back home, and she was in tears when she got back home on that Monday, just that somebody out of the blue, this old couple out of the blue, could be so nasty to a young girl. And we cheered her up a bit. This £120 shop, there's a lot of chocolate in it. You can imagine a 19-year-old. Dad's paid for this. There's loads of, it wasn't exactly a balanced diet, but it was cool. And we thought everything was okay. We sat down that evening and started to watch the Disney films, and Lord of the Rings was right. We'll watch the Lord of the Rings. We got if we're going to isolate, we've got so much on. And our house in Norfolk, we had a lovely big back garden with about an acre, quite a big back garden. We'd built it.
Oh, massive.
It's huge. And so there was no dramas. If you wanted to kick a ball around or run around, we got loads of space around. Not like Christopher, my nephew, who lived in a flat in northern Italy, who could go out once a week to do his shopping. So we were massively fortunate. And so on the Monday night and the Tuesday, we were just watching Disney films. I was still working during the day, and it was all cool. And then the three things that Em really loved doing: going to the gym, as I've already said, she loved that. Working in the pub, because she worked behind the bar. I do go in there on a Thursday night with my mates. A group of dads of a certain age go in there, and of all different backgrounds, some ex-military, some have nothing to do with the military, just a load of us. And she would be behind the bar, and she would absolutely hold court. She was one of those girls that could absolutely hold court. But then she'd come back home, and she'd just need 3 or 4 hours to chill out on her own, because she'd put so much effort into that. But she could see work, the pub was going to close. And then on the Wednesday morning, she woke up and she was quite agitated. She was very agitated. She wanted to go up. She was coughing by now, and she wanted to go up to the coast, to Stanton, take our little doggy for a walk. And we said, you can't, you're coughing, you could, spread it. So the rules were at the time, if you're coughing, you stay in, and your family stays in. And she was really agitated about this and really upset about it. And she just went outside and slammed the door into our back garden. And when we'd been Emma had been under cams before, all the specialists said, if Emma ever has a bit of a fit, don't chase her, because it could agitate the situation, could aggravate it. Just let her go off, cool down. And that's what we'd done for years. And she would always go, we've got some trees, and she'd always go and just sit in the bottom of the trees. She'd got dens in the trees where her and her brother and sister would made dens when they were little and stuff. Anyhow, we went out about 10 minutes later to try and find her, 15 minutes later, and we went into and we couldn't find her, and then we found her, and that was the day our lives changed forever. The pressure of being kept in. She tried to take her own life. It was just our world just there's no words to describe what it just hell on earth was unleashed. Devastation just was unleashed. We got her to hospital. We got her to hospital. That was on the Wednesday, and the hospital didn't really know what to do with her. In terms of, she went into critical care, but because it was the start of the pandemic, no one knew how to treat.
She was still alive.
She was, I managed to kind of get some of her heartbeat back again. So she was still just about alive. So she went into intensive care.
What had she done?
I don't want to go into that.
Okay.
Because but she went into intensive care. My wife went in the ambulance with her. We had all the world's ambulances and police pitch up. So there's no hiding it in a little village in Norfolk. So myself and my eldest daughter kind of put something out on Facebook, said, Em's tried to take her own life. She's in critical care. We don't know what's going to happen. And the love and care that suddenly we got from the community was,
because people are already aware from previous, right?
Yeah, they were aware. She's grown up in the village. She'd lived in that village for all of her life, and she'd been to the football club there. She'd been to school there. She worked in the pub there. She knew more people in the village than we did, and some people knew about struggles as well. But the love that we had from the neighbours, just the whole village, was incredible. We couldn't see her for 2 days in hospital, simply because she went put onto the critical care COVID ward. So in those days, there were 2 critical care wards, one if you had got COVID and one if you hadn't. If you got COVID, then you couldn't have anyone to see you. So it took 2 days to get a diagnosis, has she got COVID or hasn't she? And on the Friday night, we were told, you can come and see her. She hasn't got COVID. Her cough was a common cold. So she'd common cold. It's like, shit. We got into hospital, and they said there's no chance of her surviving now. That's it. Her brain she's brain dead. We can't see anything. Also, although her body's alive. So there we were looking at our baby daughter. They told us that she'd signed the organ donation register when she was 12, when she'd started high school. They'd obviously had a talk from the organ donation world, and we then went through the next couple of days. The only pinprick of light in this whole mess was the fact that her organs might go and help somebody else. But the whole organ donation process was buggered up at the time simply because all of the experts that normally do the organ donation process were now on the COVID critical care wards. So anaesthetists who would normally administer the anaesthetics were no longer doing anaesthetist stuff. They were doing critical care doctor stuff. So it was a real messed up situation. But every time an organ donor was found, they'd come and find us and say, we've got someone for her kidneys or someone for a liver. So for a heart, it's a biggie. They found a 14-year-old girl for a heart, which is like, wow, that's cool. And then on the Sunday, they got everything lined up. They got the operating theatres. They got all the ambulances.
She's still alive at this point.
Yeah, she's still alive. So when they organ donation process, the staff at the hospital were just so caring and so lovely. And all we're doing is trying to keep her alive, to keep the organs in the best condition as possible, so that donors stand as much chance. And they don't tell you where the donors live or anything like that. They just tell you that we found a donor, and then they tell you afterwards, or they tell you the age and the sex of the donor, and that's it. So to know that her heart was going to a 14-year-old was just like brilliant. That's someone's life absolutely transformed. And Emma got a good heart, in terms of, in more ways than one, but bless her. She was, massively generous, but fit as well. And then, on the Sunday, we held her as we turned the life support off, and just our world just imploded again. To watch your daughter just slip away in front of you. And then as soon as she's died, as soon as the life support, is gone, they whisk her away, because they've got, the most important thing then is to keep the organs as fresh as possible. So they've got to get into the operating theatre. And then that was the last time we saw her, because we couldn't see her after that, because there were no rules they didn't know how to treat people or people who died in with the undertakers, so we couldn't go and see her lying in rest or anything like that. That was it. So we got back again. We got back on the Sunday. We just lost our daughter. Our family is just we got no. The support that we had suddenly kind of disappeared off the following day, because the following day was when the Prime Minister announced formal lockdown.
Fucking hell, man.
So it was just shit. We couldn't have anyone to see us at home in our house. So when you lose someone, you normally have mum and dad come over, or your aunts, grandparents for aunts and uncles, cousins, friends, anything like that. Nobody could come in the house. So we're petrified as, a mum and a dad, that we're going to catch COVID and we won't be able to go to Em's funeral. Everything was shit. Our friends were fantastic. People did shopping for us, so we didn't have to go shopping, so we didn't catch COVID. The support that we had. I realised when this happened, this is a big kind of mental health thing for me. I've been through some, as I've said, kind of some dodgy times in the military, and I've been trained for those, and I hadn't been trained for this, and I knew I couldn't cope with this at all. So I needed help, and I think that was, for me personally, knowing that I needed help and reaching out and saying to everyone I knew, shit, we as a family need help, because we don't know how we're going to get through this.
How was your wife and your kids?
Just broken, absolutely broken. And that still goes on. It's 3 years on now, and it's like a bomb goes off in your family, and you try and build it back together. There's huge chunks of it missing, and it doesn't look the same at all. It's so hard. Everyone that's death by suicide, however someone dies is horrendous, however a loved one dies, but death by suicide brings a load more emotions that perhaps aren't there in other types of death.
How do you mean?
So you feel guilty, you feel massively guilty about, should I have done something? Your job as a dad is to bring your kids up into the world, isn't it? That's your main task in life, and you failed. So you feel, should I have done some more? There's blame there. You start to feel anger towards the person that's died. Because why have you put us through this? You've done something, and if you could see the devastation that's in your mom and your brothers and sisters, in your family, you should see how that affects them. You probably wouldn't have done this. So and I learned, obviously went through this at the time, but a few months later, I did a course with Mind, a suicide bereavement course, and it talks about the complex emotions connected with suicide.
This is one of the things that really pisses me off, when you see you see ignorant people and say that people who take their own lives are basically self-centered assholes.
Yeah.
And from experience, nothing can be further than the truth.
We found a letter, or I found a letter. Police, but someone dies at home, police all come round and but they missed a letter. And I found a letter about 4 weeks later to kind of answer your question there. And it's a letter from M, and it was a folded up piece of A4, and it said, "I'm sorry" on there. And I opened it up, and it was like, shit, this is her final note to us. And it was her reasons for taking a life.
In the letter? Oh my God.
And she genuinely thought at that time that this was the right thing to do to ease her pain. And she wanted us to have a happy life afterwards. Honestly, it was just...
So going from... She wanted to move on to a better place.
Yeah, she don't be sad. You guys go and have a lovely life. Don't be sad by what I've done. It's like, oh my God. So she genuinely thought that. But there was... Yeah, it was just... So, yeah, to answer that question of yours, no, this was M wasn't, had obviously prepared something. She wasn't going to, and the trigger event was not being allowed to go up to the coast, not being allowed to go out to drive. But
so she'd been thinking about
she
it
must
for a
have
while.
done what she must have done to write the letter, because when she went out the door,
It was immediate.
we found her 10 minutes later. So that letter was a well thought out,
Jesus.
well considered it, and yeah, just so she'd obviously arranged it or planned it, and then she was, which is just horrendous.
So she hadn't been happy for a while.
Yeah, and we don't know when that letter was written, but in the previous couple of weeks probably. And she, I said we'd been planning. I'd been planning at work with the pandemic, and her cousin had been in. She was getting frustrated about the pandemic. She knew she'd kind of had a few emotional outbursts about it, saying, this pandemic is going to affect loads of people's mental health and blah, blah, blah. So we hadn't realised the impact this was going to have on her mental health. God, if I had, I'd have said break the rules and drive the car up to bloody Hunstanton, because that would have, solved the issue. But it was just a young girl who saw her future just disappear and couldn't cope and took it away. And yeah, it was just shit. We had her funeral 2.5 weeks later, 6 people at a funeral. It was just, and we got back home, and we left our house. We went a long way around the village, and there were loads of people from the village out, obeying social distancing rules, all at the end of their gardens and stuff, all taking their dogs for a walk at the exact same time. But we got to the
It's on the way to the
Creme.
funeral.
Yeah. But there's no church service, no proper funerals. It was literally a 25-minute slot at the Creme with 6 of us. And we got back home, and we're just broken. I can't describe it. My wife's absolutely just broken. And she just says, Tim, no one will remember Em in a year's time. She's gone now. That's it. That was all for nothing. And that kind of lodged away in my head massively. It was just like, I've got to do something. I don't know what. I've got to do something to fight back against this suicide, because it can't not be in vain. And it was about a week and a half after a suicide, so about 4 weeks after she died, my eldest daughter, bear in mind we're in absolute carnage still, we don't, just getting up in the... Have you seen the speech by Admiral William McRaven? It's a US Navy SEAL, 4-star SEAL, and it said, if you just Google it, it's about kind of getting through hard times. And I'd seen it, and I didn't go and look at it particularly, but I just remember this speech that he gives, very inspirational speech, and he talks about getting out of bed in the morning and making your bed in the morning. And his whole point is, if you get up in the morning, you're going through a hard time, and you make your bed, and you do nothing else all day, when you come back to the bed that evening, you look at your bed and you go, I achieved something this morning. And that I honestly, when I didn't know, when Em died, getting up, just making breakfast for the kids, it was a mountain to climb. And I remember that speech by the Admiral, and I thought, shit, I need to do something. And I would make our bed, and I'd make all the kids' beds. So at least when all of us went back to bed in the evening, the beds were made. And I don't know where that came from when I was in that absolute pit of despair. I also massively reached out to every man and his dog that would listen to us. But we were about Padre at work, and he came round and stuff. But it was all at Safa and all these mined, but they were all outside only, and because of social distancing and stuff. It was about, I say, 4 weeks after Em died, it's about a week and a half after a funeral. And Annabelle, she's my eldest daughter, Miss Sensible. She was at university, but back home from university. She came to me, and we're in this pit of despair, and she just, Dad, I've been speaking to this bloke in Manchester. And I'm going, oh shit, Annie, what are you doing to us? We haven't got the capacity. No, Dad, it's not like that. I've seen, they're in the same situation as us. They've just lost their daughter. And I've been speaking to, the bloke is Mike. Mike's a firefighter at Manchester Airport. And he lost his daughter Beth. She was 17, 5 days after Em. So I got Mike's phone number and texted him and basically said, Mike, mate, because when you're going through this, it's so hard to talk to anyone that hasn't been through it about it, because you don't want to burden your family and your friends with your thoughts. And so I reached out to Mike, just going, Mike, here we're in the same, so sorry about Beth, let's talk. And Mike's how was Mike? 56-year-old burly firefighter from Manchester Airport, bit of a rode the Atlantic twice, got rescued, got rescued once, doesn't matter. But kind of an outdoor type, big ex-triathlete, his knees are knackered now. And I spoke to him the following day, so a month after Emma died, and we just agreed there and then, these two blokes who didn't know each other, we were going to, whenever we needed to, would give each other a ring. And it was such an emotional talk, us two just talking, as two, that kind of peer support. Right, mate, we can't rely on the services, the statutory services out there to support us. So whatever time of day and night you want, just give me a ring if you're feeling like shit, and we'll talk. And that's exactly what we did. Mike was suicidal. Mike, he kept a journal. He was going to kill himself.
Jesus Christ.
Just after losing his daughter. And
what was the situation? What was his family makeup?
So...
What is his family?
What is his family maker? He's got, so it's Mike and Helen, and Beth was their 17-year-old daughter. He got a daughter slightly older called Emily. It was Emily who Annabelle had initially contacted through the magic of social media. They'd got in touch, and then he got another daughter from a previous marriage, Charlie, who's a little bit older, late 20s. But they were, Beth, I never knew Beth clearly, but Beth was a talented recording artist, talented singer. She went to music college, she was 17, and she got a recording contract. So she was doing really, really well. And all the gigs around Manchester, or the venues she used to play at, started to close. And she went into a pit of despair on the Friday night. And
was it right at the start of the pandemic?
Yeah, so Em died on the Sunday, and then it's the following Friday.
5 days later.
Yeah, 5 days later. And Mike came back off shift. He'd done the overnight shift when it came home, and took his dog out for a walk, came back and just heard screams from inside, and his wife had found Beth. And Beth had basically taken her own life, they believed, just because her world was falling apart. All the college had stopped, all her recording contracts, she thought, had gone. And that teenage emotional brain had just made a stupid short-term decision. And Mike, absolute salt of the earth character, he'd, his family home in Manchester in Sale, he'd bought kind of a wreck, if you're not like, and then done it up, beautiful old kind of Victorian style house, and he'd done it all. It was beautiful, and taken Beth to all sorts of lessons, self-defense lessons for all, to try and protect herself. And Mike had just got no idea that, the most likely thing to kill her was herself. It wasn't something else. It wasn't. So Mike and I spoke over that. So we're now into April 2020. We're into the pandemic, and we're just, Mike goes off to see his sister up in Scotland, and I'm speaking to him. He's in a mess. We're both in a mess, but he's in a real mess. But he's supported by his. The thing about Mike and me is we both knew that this was beyond us. So we both knew we needed to seek help. We both knew we didn't need to sit on it. So he went to his chaplain. He got a fire service chaplain at the airport, Chaplain George, who turned out to be brilliant because we met him later. married to the Bishop of Derby, and she looked after us as well. So it's all brilliant. It's all cool. So Mike and I kind of went through the next few weeks. I told him, it was when I was talking to Mike, I told him about the letter from M. There were two things in that letter from M as well that I haven't said already. One of them was, don't be ashamed of what I've done. And the other one was, if other people can learn from what I've done. It's like, I told Mike this. When I found that, honestly, I found that letter, it's like, it killed me a second time, devastation. But Mike and I say, Mike's already rowed the Atlantic. We both kind of wanted to do something. We didn't know what. We've got to do something, Tim. We've got to do something. So we went over the pandemic, our families are in crisis, it's just shit, but we're trying to keep it together as dads. That's what dads do, isn't it, for your family? But it's just a nightmare. And I mentioned already, I went on a suicide bereavement course by Mind as part of my help seeking. There was an 8-week, and it went through all the different emotions after you've lost someone to suicide. It wasn't therapy. It was just about how to keep moving forward. Not moving on. You'll never move on after you've lost a loved one. You'll move forward and you'll take that loved one with you. And that was really powerful because it went through all the different emotions you've got after losing someone to suicide. And I say the biggest lesson I learned from that was never to get caught in one emotion. So if there's lots of guilt and blame around suicide, as I say, and we met subsequently lots of people that were stuck in that moment of losing their loved one 7, 10 years later, 20 years later, where they were stuck absolutely in the moment, that they were felt so much guilt that was absolutely consuming them, or they felt so much blame, and the grief was just overwhelming. How can their loved one, their closest, dearest, their son, their daughter, their husband or whatever, have kind of turned their back on them and taken, not reached out to them, but taken their own life. So Mike and I kind of kept doing that. But Mike phoned me up one day and he said, Tim, I've been in touch with this charity called Papyrus, which turns out to be the charity that we work for. He said, Tim, did you know that suicide's the biggest killer of under 35s in the UK? I was going, what? It can't be.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Suicide is the biggest killer. I'm going, no, it can't be. And we kind of checked, yeah. And 200 school-age children take their own lives every year. What? What, in the UK? No. I do professionally do kind of emergency planning and stuff like that. And you're going, there's not many risks out there that kind of kill 200 school children every year. Anyhow, I'm doing this course with Mind and I'm getting into the statistics, bit of a maths man, me. And I'm talking to the facilitator, fantastic lady, fantastic volunteer, brilliant. And she knows I'm a bit of a numbers man. I said, could you get, how many people in the UK die by suicide? She goes, I'll get you the Samaritans report. And she got me the Samaritans report from 2017, I think it was. And this is a statistical report on suicides in the UK. And it always lags where we are at the moment because it has to go to the coroner's court. So it takes time for a death to go through the coronial process. And I got this report and it said 6,000 people in the UK and Ireland die by suicide every year. And I phoned Mike up and said, mate, 6,000 people in the UK are dying by suicide every year. I didn't know that. When she had her suicide attempts before, no one talked. It was all kind of hushed away. We don't talk about the S word, do we? Because it's too scary to talk about. But we're losing 6,000 people a year to it in the UK. That's ridiculous.
And they're the ones that are recorded as suicide, right? So
absolutely.
I have just remembered who I was talking to about this, and I'm not going to recount the details of how we came about it. But the person said that if there's no evidence that they were planning a suicide, that it doesn't get recorded as suicide, it gets recorded as misadventure.
You are absolutely spot on. And we didn't. So a couple of months later, we had Em and Beth's inquest on Em's was on the Friday in Norfolk, Beth's was on the Monday in Manchester, and Em was death by suicide. Beth got a narrative verdict, which means there's a bit of a complex story behind it, and there's no note or anything like that, and it isn't necessarily recorded as suicide. But we met hundreds of people on the walk who'd lost a loved one, and we started, when we realised just what you said about how these recorded, we started to ask people, your son, your daughter, what was the verdict? death by misadventure, death by misadventure, death by misadventure. And it, over and over again, was death by misadventure. So exactly what you said, 6,000 by suicide, 200 schoolchildren by suicide, but how many more by who get death by misadventure?
So for it to be recorded as suicide, it has
Yeah.
to be unequivocal evidence that they were planning to do it, and
Yeah, there has to be. It doesn't have to be of a criminal level of evidence.
so like they told someone
Text or a
text,
note or something
they
like
left a
that.
note. Okay,
If someone
right,
just
yeah.
goes on the spur of the moment and takes their own life, it,
or hasn't told anyone they're going
Has-
to do it,
yeah.
they've been planning it for ages.
yeah, and just haven't told anyone. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
No, neither do we. So we're going shitty death. So we're sitting on all this information, and Mike and I are going, right, we want to do something. So let's walk in between our two homes in Norfolk and Manchester. But then the pandemic starts to hit again. The second wave, and we can't do anything. So we're just sitting on it. But we want to do something. We want to fight back a little bit. And then Mike goes on one of the Papyrus training courses, and he's sitting by this young lad called Gregor, and Mike had heard about this other guy called Andy Airy, a Cumbrian dude, a bit of an outdoor man, a bit of a legend in Papyrus, though, because Andy's daughter Sophie had died in December 2018, taken her own life, and Andy had kind of instantly tried to look for a suicide prevention charity.
Was she a bit older?
Yeah,
than
so
yours and
Sophie
Mike's
was a
daughter?
29-year-old nurse up in Scotland who had, so Beth was 17, my Em was at 19, and Soph was 29. Again, didn't know her. And in December 18, she had a relationship breakdown. It was her choice. She'd walked out on her husband. And as Andy says, that's not, Andy and Sophie's mom were divorced, but, friends, but divorced. So a marriage breakup wasn't new in their family. And Sophie just sent Andy a text to say, I love you, Dad. And then that was it. And she sent her ex-husband a text to tell him where to find the car. And they found Sophie's body 3 days later, 21st of December, I think it was, 2018, 3 days before Christmas. Andy's such a positive guy, obviously blew his family apart as well.
What drove her to do it?
They think the relationship breakdown.
As in the breakdown?
Yeah, the breakdown. She thought, because she was a really successful nurse, she was getting a flat. Her professional life was good, and they think it was just a relationship breakdown, and she thought she'd let everyone down.
Well, I
with
can
her.
be embarrassed, ashamed of it.
But that's what Andy couldn't understand, because him and Sophie's mom, George, had split up when she was 3. So, why take your life over at a relationship breakdown? That your mom and dad have been in a relationship breakdown, and they still, they're a good example of, parents splitting, but then still doing everything to the best ability for the kid. And but Andy is such a positive guy, and he said, if we don't have Christmas, we won't do Christmas ever again. If you missed the first Christmas, so Sophie had died or found the body on the 21st of December. If we don't do Christmas 5 days' time or 4 days' time, next year it'll be our first Christmas. It'll be a nightmare. So they kind of did a sort of Christmas. And again, the local parish priest came round to see Andy, and he said something really good. He said, you'll never move. The terminology, you, after losing someone, you'll never move on from Sophie. You'll move forward. And you'll always have a Sophie-sized hole in you. But what you'll do is you'll grow around that hole. And that's just what Andy was right. I've got to do something. And Sophie had entered a half marathon with her best friend. Now, Andy, if you look at a photo on our website, friggin' hell, Andy is not a runner now. He used to be, but he's not a runner. So Andy did a lot of training, and he entered the half marathon. He got lots of support from a lady called Alison Freeman, who's a BBC news reporter in the Northeast. And he raised about £40,000 for Papyrus. This was in kind of early December 19, so a year before Beth and Em died. And so going back to Mike's on this course with Gregor and his son, and says, do you think your dad would be interested in a walk? And Gregor's, I don't know, why didn't you ask him? So Mike phoned up, and this was just before Christmas, December, it's December 21 now. So it was December 20, so the 2-year anniversary of Sophie's death. It was Christmas. It was just, everything got put on hold. Anyhow, the following March, April, Andy and Mike spoke to each other, and they went for a walk. And they just went for a walk up north. And all this time I'm supporting Mike. You know, we're talking to each other through Christmases and stuff and how shit our lives are and to get through. But yeah, it was in the April of 2021, Mike and Andy went for a walk. Very emotional, two dads meeting each other for the first time, both lost their daughters. And Mike told him about me, this bloke from Norfolk, and thought, I've got an idea about doing a bit of a walk to raise a bit of suicide prevention awareness and kind of get the fact that suicide's the biggest killer. Let's start talking about it. And suicide's the biggest killer, of under 35s. And Mike is a shit navigator, okay? Absolutely shit. Andy's an outdoor man, used to run an outdoor shop in Cumbria, in Keswick. Lovely.
I would have thought it'd be the RAF guy being the bad navigator. But
No, not me. I got my maps
in
up.
my experience.
It might have been, not me. But so they got Mike got an AA 2010 road atlas out. You know the page at the front of every road atlas that shows the whole UK. Yeah. Mike has literally put a dot in Cumbria, in Andy's house, a dot in Manchester, and a dot in Norfolk. Andy, I've got a route. Oh my God! And it was just like, shit. Okay, let's do it then. And Andy was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we thought we'd do a bit of planning. So we met for the first time in about May 2021. Zoom call, as we were all doing bloody Zoom calls then. And we had a very emotionally charged meeting, but we agreed then, right, let's walk. And when should we do it? Fuck the planning, let's just do it. Let's just do it in October. So kind of 5 months later, less than 5 months later, we're off. let's just start the planning.
So the walk was from, so what was the walk?
The walk, so what we decided to do was walk between Andy's house in Cumbria, Mike's in Manchester, to my house in Norfolk. About 320 plus miles. Why not? Let's just do it. Three fat old dads. Couldn't run. Mike's knees are shot. Andy's, we're not going to run. We'll walk. Everyone can walk. And we came up with the idea that it's three dads walking, isn't it? It's three dads walking because they lost their daughters to suicide. And the three dads, three homes, 300 miles, and we try and raise 3,000 quid each. Raise the profile of Papyrus a bit. And if you looked at the time at Papyrus are very kind of northwest based, Ireland, bit in Scotland and a bit in Wales, and a bit in London as well. But the thing about Papyrus, and I've got to kind of plug the charity here because anyone that's listening, the charity. So Papyrus is a suicide prevention charity. Yeah. It runs a line called Hopeline 247, and that's for anyone that is concerned about a young person under 35, or that young person themselves can phone up any time of day or night now. At the time when we started to walk, it was only 9 a.m. to midnight, but now it's 24/7. They can phone up this charity, and they won't just speak. They will speak to somebody that is a suicide prevention expert. They're not volunteers; these are paid professionals. They're brilliant people. They come from all walks of life. They're ex-teachers, ex-mental health, ex-prison officers. And they have done some absolutely fantastic, but the whole idea of these people on the other is called Hopeline 247, and you can call that as a dad if you're worried about your kids. You can call that as a grandparent if you're worried about your grandparents or even your kids. If you're worried about someone, and they will give you specific suicide prevention advice. And
16 or under?
No, 35. It's young person under 35.
They're defining young person as under 35.
Are you there yet?
I feel a little bit better about myself. I feel a little bit better. I'm only 6 years past being a young person.
God, I'm a bit further than that.
So for under 35s?
Under 35.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah, so for under 35s, you can call this charity and go, I'm feeling shit. I'm having suicidal thoughts. So that's the number you've got on the screen. Hopeline 247 0800 068 4141.
People can't see this. We can see this.
Okay. So yeah, Hopeline 2. Just Google Papyrus.
I'll put the link to this in the
it's so important. Yeah. So this charity, it's only a small charity, but boy does it punch way above its weight. The charity does that. It also does lots of training. It delivers suicide prevention training, which is fantastic. Different levels of it: suicide prevention awareness, and right up to kind of applied suicide intervention skills, which is kind of the top level. And then it does a third thing, which is influence government. So they've got a dude called Josh who sits in government, and engages with politicians and policymakers and stuff about suicide prevention.
Can you come back to the walk a second?
Yeah, we'll get back to the walk.
100% want to come back on the
Yeah,
post,
cool,
but
absolutely.
Tell me about the walk. So,
Right, so the
'cause
walks-
I would imagine that 300 miles, three guys. See, that is a journey of self-discovery, is it not?
Oh God, yeah, the walk was
Even if you weren't on it for the reasons you were on it.
so. It was incredibly powerful. We didn't realise how big it was going to be. So we planned the route. We met for the first time face to face at Mike's house, beginning of July 2020.
Yourself and Andy.
Me, Mike, and Andy face to
Oh,
face.
you'd never met before that.
No, before the 2nd of July, kind of 3 months before the walk, we'd never met face to face.
Wow. Okay. I assumed you'd already met Mike in person.
No,
Okay.
no.
Of course not, because of the pandemic.
Pandemic. So we
Fucking pandemic.
So yeah, we hadn't met. So we went up to Mike's house, his lovely old house. Met on the Friday night. Very emotional. Helen, his wife, cooked a massive meal. We had quite a few beers. Kind of quite a few beers. Then on the Saturday and Sunday, we started to plan the walk. Got all the maps. Andy, because of his outdoor background, we got OS 1 in 25,000 maps for the entire route all the way down. So we did massive amount of planning. And then we went away packed. We then met at the beginning of September, which was our official launch of the walk. Still aiming for £3,000 each, and we met at the Seven Brothers Brewery in Manchester. Some of Mike's friends owned it, and it's all around beer. Beer kind of goes a lot with our walks, and we, as you have to do, so Seven Brothers Brewery, and we then it was about that time that Andy said, "My BBC, I've got a tame BBC reporter that might be interested in this. Are you happy for me to approach them?" And this is Alison, who'd helped him out before, and we were like, "Yeah, go for it." And Alison, the first thing Alison said, "I think I can get this on BBC Breakfast." It was like, oh my word. So Alison came, in 2 days, her and a fantastic cameraman, Adam, came and interviewed Andy in Cumbria, Mike in Manchester, and me in Norfolk on our village green in front of the pub about what we were going to do. And that went out. We had a phone call on BBC on 3 weeks before the walk on a Sunday saying, "Can one of you be on the red sofa tomorrow morning?" Sure, yeah, okay. Mike went on the red sofa with the charity chief exec, a guy called Jed.
Nice.
And we kind of launched the walk. And at the time, we were at about £9,000 collectively, the three of us. So we made about our three. And we'd had this big moral dilemma. Do you reckon we can push it out to £10,000 each? Yeah, let's do it. Let's go £10,000. And I remember telling Alison that we're going to push it out to £10,000. And she just absolutely laughed at me. She goes, "If this goes on BBC Breakfast, you'd be way more than that." I was like, no. Anyhow, Mike went on BBC Breakfast on this Monday morning. By the end of that day, we've gone from about 9,000 to
When were you due to start the walk?
in October.
What month is this?
This September.
Okay, yeah.
It's about September 23rd or something like that.
And
So
you're
it's about
9K, yeah.
yeah. So the donations online. Bear in mind, we hadn't done anything yet apart from drunk lots of beer and been on BBC Breakfast. Went up to £48,000,
Oh my god.
and it was like, oh, what?
Like on the same day?
On the same day.
Oh, wow.
So we're now going, oh God, this is big, isn't it? Oh, no, this is big. So we'd only still met twice, and then the third time we met was when we started the walk. So I got on the train from Norfolk up through Preston to arrive at Andy's in Cumbria, and we all met there. But on the way up, I'm sitting on Preston train station, waiting on the connection on my kit bag, just looking like a sad old middle-aged man, not knowing what's going on. And I had a WhatsApp from the charity, and that's when Daniel Craig had donated £10,000, and they were just like,
god.
this is on top of the 48 we've just had. It's just like, Daniel Craig, and he wants to be associated with you. And honestly, I just burst into tears. Everyone on the platform must have thought, what the hell's he on about? This is bloke there. And it was just, our story had reached Daniel Craig. It was like shitty death.
And he out of the blue had done
Out of the blue.
And then was happy to use him as promotional.
Absolutely. He was happy to be, for the press to know that Daniel Craig had donated £10,000 for suicide prevention. It's like shitty. And the important point, I said about the emergency line, they reckon it costs, or the funding figure is £5 for each call, because they're paying for the professionals and all this stuff. Yeah. So Daniel Craig's donation, that's 2,000 life-saving calls. It's really, bloody hell, we were just bowled over. And we got up to Cumbria, more BBC reporting on the Friday night, and then on the Saturday morning, we set off from Village Hall in Moorland in Cumbria, which is in the Eden Valley, beautiful part of the UK, little known part of the UK. We were live on BBC Breakfast and setting off, and it was loads of people from the village, firefighters, because Mike being a firefighter, lots of support for us. And we set off. And that's when you talk about the journey of discovery or the voyage of discovery. We'd gone about 10 yards out of the village hall, and this old lady, joined us, Suzanne, who in her 70s or something like that, really slight lady with a walking poles and everything. Can I join you? Yeah, I want to talk. And she'd lost her daughter, who'd been a doctor. And she just wanted to walk with us, and she walked with us the whole of that for about 19 miles on that first day. I think she was 78.
Oh my God, that is not an insignificant number of miles.
And we're talking
for a 35-year-old.
And we're talking, bumpy ground. We're up through Shap, and the Shap's, we're talking through Cumbria, and she absolutely rigidly stuck with us.
Wow.
We had Alan Hinks, OBE, first British mountaineer to climb all 14 8,000-meter peaks. He came and he's a mate of Andy's, and he came and joined us. And he, what a bloke he is. Comes across as this really gruff, but you scratch the surface, and he's got suicide or survival of suicide in his family. And
what was his name?
Alan Hinks.
Yeah.
Massive mountaineer, really top bloke. And then we'd walked about 10 yards, and Suzanne came and joined us. Then we walked about another half a mile, and we met Amy's mom. Amy's mom and her husband, this lady just in, I don't know, she was in her 60s or something, just in floods of tears, absolute floods of tears. Her daughter had taken her own life on the 29th of August that year. And she told us the story, Amy and her husband and 2 kids. And she was just a woman. And she got this order of service, and Mike's such a caring character, just went, do you want me to carry that order of service all the way to Norfolk? Yeah, if you can. And we suddenly realised that there were all these suicide-proof people that were starting to join us. Because when you lose someone to suicide, you're so isolated. You're so isolated. There's the guilt, there's the shame, there's the stigma around it. And all of a sudden, we realised we were giving people an outlet that if they'd lost someone to suicide, they could walk with us. And we started to get, this went along the whole route. But someone would be standing at the side of our route, and they'd be in their walking kit, and we'd say, oh, you come to walk with us? Because we've got a tracker on, you see. We've got a tracker so everyone could find us. You come to walk with us? Yeah. Start walking, and then, why have you come to walk with us? And it would all come out. And they'd tell us about their son, their daughter, their brother, their sister, or whatever. Very emotional. Some people hadn't spoken about the loss of their loved one for 70 years, some of them. So there was one lady, I'm getting way ahead of myself yet, but there was one lady way further down the route. Dad had been in the Second World War, soldier in the Second World War, come back, he'd been wounded, physically wounded. And then when Jan was 3 years old in 1953, Dad just disappeared. Jan lived in our village, just disappeared. When she was 12, she was told that Dad had died. And then when she was in her 30s, it finally came out that Dad had taken his own life. PTSD. It would have been known as PTSD now. And Jan hadn't really told anyone about that until we met her brother and then her sister. My brother and then her as we were walking, and she kind of opened up, and she, what's that, 2021. So we're talking 1953 to 2021. So we just gave that vehicle, but sorry, the first day, go way back to the first day, and we'll come back to Amy in a minute.
Well, the isolation's interesting because like people, different cultures, different areas, different locations, different kinds of families. That'll all play into how isolated they are. I had a friend, who killed himself, and the fact it was suicide, did it in a foreign country, and the fact it was suicide couldn't be mentioned. I've never heard his parents actually refer to it as suicide. Everyone knows it was suicide. Right. And the main reason was because they're very religious, and they live in a very religious community. Yeah. And they are God-fearing, God-worshipping people, and they go to church, and in order for their son to have the burial and the service they wanted, if it had been suicide, the church would have said no.
That was exactly the same as Jan's dad. I think suicide was made legal, if you like, in 1961. Before that, it was illegal in the UK. So that's where the term kind of committed suicide comes from, which we try not to use now. People use the term committed. because before 1961 they committed an unlawful act.
A crime.
A crime.
Interesting.
So it absolutely plays in it. So
How ridiculous is that?
I know. So Jan's mum had to fight to have her dad, this hero soldier, buried in a churchyard in 1953, which she did. She won to do that.
Why was suicide made a crime in the first place? Let's have a look at that.
Because it was to do with religion, as you say. You know, it was a crime against God to
Oh,
take
of
your own
course,
life.
of
So,
course,
yeah.
yeah.
And so what if someone had attempted to take their own life? The police would come, nick them, and throw them in a cell. So you could be put to jail for attempting to take your own life rather than being given any support. So that's where the stigma still is. And that's where you incorrectly hear people saying the word committed suicide. You don't commit suicide. You're not committing a crime. Your most complex organ in your body has just gone a bit haywire for a while. You don't commit having heart disease. You don't commit having cancer, do you? You die by suicide.
That's why when people say that they're selfish and all that for doing it, that's what pisses me off. Is that those people saying that? You're like, no, that person who did that, they were ill.
Oh yeah,
like they were sick.
Yeah,
they made bottom line.
They made a spontaneous decision.
Well, and regardless of how spontaneous it was, it's like they were fucking ill at the moment they did it, and probably seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, years sometimes leading up to that. They were sick to make that decision. A healthy person, a person sound in mind, does not make that decision. You don't make that decision.
That's you're jumping way ahead, but yeah, that's that's exactly what we've been campaigning for post the second walk. I totally agree. Totally.
I've been to that. I've been to the stage of considering it.
Yeah,
in a way, I'm glad because of what it taught me. When I look back at it and the build up to it, the months before, I was making wild decisions, wild. And I think back and some of them I recall some of the stories now and decisions I made to people like a joke. I think this is the situation I was in. I did this, and this, and it seemed logical to me to do these things, and I was in that, and that was pretty fucking obvious to me at that time. But I still allowed me to get to the stage of considering it, And I say I'm glad about having been in that situation. I wouldn't wish it upon myself again, fucking ever. But I'm glad because it gives a clarity on other people's situations. But it's also, as you will know, from talking to others and your own experience, it's extremely saddening because you realise what the mental state of people must be in who actually go through with it.
There's some real horrendous statistics that we need to own up to as a society. One of them is 1 in 5 of us will have suicidal thoughts in our life.
That's a recent revelation to me. I didn't know that.
I
didn't know that.
Yeah.
A few months ago I found out. It might have been you who said it to me on the phone.
I think it might have been, But I only learned that. We went and watched, this was after the after the first work before the second one. We went to watch a brilliant Cumbrian charity called Every Life Matters deliver suicide prevention in schools. And they were telling the 11 and 12-year-olds about the statistics that, 1 in 5 of us will have a suicidal thought in our lives. So rather than push it under the carpet, why don't we talk about it when you're in a sound state of mind? Let's put a suicide prevention plan in place. Yeah, why not? And then those suicidal thoughts, that instant you're going to have that suicidal thought, on average they last 15 minutes. So if you
really,
so that down, and we all three of us said if our girls had taken, before we knew this, 10 seconds out, they probably wouldn't have made the same decision. At least one of them wouldn't have made the same decision. Not saying all three of them wouldn't, but those downtime. We all know when we have downtimes in our life, they can really, when you hit rock bottom. It's about telling our people that rock bottom feeling doesn't last forever. You can get through it. So we kind of on that first walk, a really emotional story I said about Amy, going back to little Amy, beautiful, beautiful lady on the back of her order of service. She was in a wedding dress, and the following day we're walking. And an open-top car pulls out. Mike stops. Michael talk to anyone who's always at the back, never navigating because he's too dangerous to navigate. And transpires, we didn't realise this at the time, but transpires it was Amy's mother and father-in-law because they spoke about losing their daughter and the impact it's had on their son and the 2 young kids. So Kirk with Stephen. And we just stopped a little bit later at Kirkby, and one of Beth's old friends who's moved to that area, her mum comes and buys us some ice creams. There's loads of bikers around. We're eating our ice creams. And we just start to walk off. Andy's carrying a big bucket full of cash, a bucket to put cash in as we're walking along. And this bloke comes out, and he's got 2 kids, and the bloke looks sad, and the 2 kids are just, looking vacant, quite frankly. Kids are about 8 and 4 years old. And this guy comes and gives us 20 quid and puts it in our pocket, and we get talking to him. Transpires it's Amy's husband, and the 2 kids we're looking at are Amy's kids.
Oh my God.
Gosh, shit. Blew us apart. To see these 2 kids just devastated. Just shit. And that's the story of our first walk. We kept every single day. We met mums and dads that were bereaved by suicide. Every single day when we met those mums and dads, we were asked them, did you know that suicide was the biggest killer of under 35s in the UK? No. Nobody knew that their loved one was part of this horrendous statistic. And we kind of kept walking. We started to get quite righteous about it. Our fundraising, the fundraising went mental, by the way. It went absolutely crazy. I didn't turn off my Just Giving notifications by email on the first day. By lunchtime,
Basics.
by lunchtime, I've got 2,000.
Basics when you're on the BBC.
It's just. By lunchtime on that Saturday, I had 2,709 emails. It was just like, shit. By the end of the first day, we're at £200,000.
Wow.
And we're like, oh, we've walked.
You say Nicole Kidman donated as well?
So, yeah, Nicole Kidman, we're a bit further on. Nicole Kidman donates, and she was filming Aquaman and we walked through Manchester, and we were on BBC Breakfast as we walked through Manchester, and she was filming Aquaman in London. She saw us on the BBC, and she donated £10,000 straight away. She also then the words she gave a load of words to the charity about the girls, mentioning the girls and why she was doing it, and about her dad and everything like that. And it was like
About her dad?
But she just looked at it not as from a daughter and father relationship. She was just thinking about her dad and we had so she and. Yeah, the words are on the website somewhere. One of our blogs they put on. But she gave some beautiful, beautiful words all about the girls, and what we were doing was fantastic. We had Lou Macari. Remember Lou Macari? You're too young for Lou Macari. Lou Macari.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
I was a young person not long ago. 6 years ago, I was a young person.
Young person under 35. Yeah. So Lou Macari, Man U footballer, played for Scotland in the 1978 World Cup. And he came and met us at Old Trafford as we went through. He donated £10,001 because he wanted to beat Daniel Craig and Nicole Kidman.
I think I did the same.
Just one more. Yeah. But he just again, we met him. He'd lost his son to suicide. So here's this massively fantastic footballer, achieved everything he possibly could in his footballing world. And wow, what an inspirational bloke that bloke is. He told us about his son, but then he also told us about the charity that he runs in Stoke, looking after homeless people. He runs a big warehouse, and it's got 47 pods in. Each pod, you can put a homeless person in, and it gives them an address, and it gets them back on their feet so they can start.
Wow.
What an inspirational bloke Lou Macari is. Just brilliant. Just, absolutely fantastic.
That's fantastic idea.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. So
what's it called, that charity?
I can't remember. Just
no, sorry,
Lou Macari. Look at Lou Macari charity, homeless charity in Stoke. We met loads of other charities as well. The small charities that have been set up after losing people. Another one is started off as the Royal Bear Force, now the Bear Force. An aircraft spotter called Richard Bland. He'd lost his son, Andrew, in 2013, I think it was. And he had written a book all about this bear called Wing Commander Andrew Bear. It's all about children's mental health. And he's now then set up the Bear Force Foundation, which is a charity that's going forward to help support young people. All these other charities came out to support us on this walk, which was incredible. But all the way through a meeting, even when we got to the finish line in our village in Sholdham, kind of 2 weeks later, we'd walked 300 miles, 320-something miles. We got onto the village playing field, which is, I don't know, half a mile from the village green where BBC Breakfast and ITV and everyone was going to be live on our village. It was incredible. But we got through we got to the village the village playing field where Em used to play football and stuff. And a friend of a friend was meeting us there because his son Ryan had taken his own life just under 3 weeks before that. And him and his wife just wanted to meet us and just see how the hell they existed, how they could function. Everywhere we went on that first walk, we got to the village green. So this is October 2021, and Alison's on there live on BBC Breakfast, and she goes, "What does it feel like to finish?" And we got by the end of the first walk, with gift aid and stuff and direct donations from Daniel Craig, etc., about £800,000 had raised for the charity, which was frigging massive,
shit.
miles more than this.
That's huge.
Yeah, huge, massively changing for the charity as well. What does it feel like to you finish? And we haven't finished. We've finished the walk, but we're now carrying the voices of all these suicide bereaved parents, brothers, sisters, because no one's talking about bloody suicide. More importantly, no one's talking about suicide prevention, and we need to.
So what do you think needs to happen?
So we wrote to the government. Big time, and we wrote to the government and said, suicide's the biggest killer. Why aren't we talking about it? And we got a brilliant letter back from Gillian Keegan, who was she was a minister in health at the time. Come and meet us. We got another one back from education, which was appalling.
Why?
Because it just said, suicide can be taught in schools. So our whole point was, what needs to happen is, if we've got this risk in society, we need to address it. So let's put, the RSHE/PSHE curriculum at school.
Yeah.
It's got mental health on it, but let's talk about the S word. Let's take it. Let's get suicide prevention into schools. So if we get suicide, because we've seen it delivered in schools, we've seen it delivered really gently, really age appropriate.
Can I?
Yeah.
See, when we first talked about this,
Yeah.
I was thinking,
Yeah.
and I must be wrong to think it because I'm assuming you more than me, right? But I was thinking, surely if you were gonna expose more children to suicide, the thing,
the S word
would increase the likelihood of suicide in or young people, or children at least.
As your kids got mobile phones,
Yeah.
you've given them access to that world. As soon as you give them a mobile phone, and do you want your kids to learn about suicide prevention from adults, or do you want them to learn about it from the internet?
It's a great fucking point.
Every kid that we give a mobile phone to, the youngest suicide we heard was 8 years old, and I met lots of parents of 11 years old.
That's
who
primary school.
Yeah, had taken their own lives. And so we're not talking about suicide. What we're talking about teaching the kids is suicide prevention. If that's the biggest risk to our young people, why don't we tell them about it? They've included mental health in the curriculum, but they don't mention the S word. If 1 in 5 of us have suicidal thoughts in our lives, if we don't teach our kids how to handle those thoughts, and the adults aren't mentioning the S word, then where are they going to look for it?
Is the logic of not mentioning the S word the logic that I had until about 30 seconds ago?
Until about 30 seconds. So it's really interesting, and we'll come on to... Yeah, we ended up going for the second walk. Okay, do you want me to fast forward through the...
I'm conscious of your time.
That's right, that's
It's
cool.
11:15.
That's okay. No, so after that, we wrote to the government, and we went and sat down in front of a minister, Gillian Keegan, who was lovely. She's got suicide in her family close to her, and we said, why don't we put suicide prevention on the school curriculum? She worked in health at the time, and she said, get it, government works in stovepipes. It's so hard to get into education. And the letter from education was really poor. Schools can teach it to older pupils if they want.
Who was the education minister?
It was signed off by Nick Gibb, who we later met, and he was lovely. So, but it was officials that wrote it, and he was the schools minister when he wrote it. Anyhow, we then were invited down to Papyrus offices in London to speak to Sajid Javid when he launched his draft cross-government suicide prevention strategy. That was in the summer of 2022, and he'd lost his brother to suicide, so he massively for that whole nation approach, suicide prevention. And we were quite buoyed up by this, but we'd met Andy Burnham, as in Mayor of Manchester, of Greater Manchester, and he'd said, to us. He was just like you. He was a bit like, oh, you're talking about the S word. Oh, should we? And then he'd done his research, and all the academic research that's out there. And we met loads of academics, and we met loads of charities. Talking about suicide does not cause suicide. What we're talking about is suicide prevention and giving people the skills to handle those thoughts so they don't go through with it. And we're not allowing, if our kids Google stuff or look at stuff on their phones, we've already got there as the adults to say, look, if you're having those thoughts, these are how you handle those thoughts, and these are people who can support you, just like Papyrus, that type of thing. And other charities. It's not the only charity. There are other charities out there. Point them to Samaritans. Point them to Every Life Matters. There's other charities out there. But let's not brush it under the carpet anymore. And we came up with this petition, which Andy Burnham helped us write, because when he was Secretary of State for Labour, he said, if I got a petition behind me, then I'd got evidence then from the public that they wanted this to happen. So him and his team in Greater Manchester, and they've been doing some great stuff in Greater Manchester around suicide and suicide prevention, just locally. The resources they've thrown at it is brilliant. Anyhow, we thought that's brilliant, but what we wanted to do was take our voice, if you like, this campaign, accidental campaign, across the country. So we said we'll do another walk in 2022, and we'll start in Northern Ireland, do a quick walk in Northern Ireland, then we'll cheek, so we've got to fly, go across the sea there, the Irish Sea. But we'll go to Edinburgh, start in Holyrood, walk from Holyrood down to the Senedd in Cardiff, then across to Westminster, about 600 miles for 3 fat old blokes. That's quite good going for us. It's going to take us about a month, and we went to start on the 8th of September last year, and it was the day the Queen died. And it was like, oh shit. We did a bit in Northern Ireland, but the 8th of October, when the Queen died, we didn't know what to do. We were at Mike's house.
You were ready to start?
We'd gone up to Mike's house. We were on the 8th of October. We're being interviewed by ITV and BBC in Mike's house in Manchester, then flying out to Northern Ireland the following morning. And we're going, what do we do? The Queen's just died. And the BBC and the ITV didn't know what to do with us. And it's like, well, if we delay it, we're going to have to delay it for 6 months, a year or whatever, because we've got all the logistics sorted out for it. We're doing this all there's no support team. It's us 3 doing it on the back of a fag packet.
Where were you staying each night?
Anyone that wanted to put us up. So we just went to people, we friends, family, connections through the military, connections all over the place. And then where we didn't know anyone, we'd put something else on social media, and strangers would look after us.
So you're looking at 20 miles a day?
20 miles a day, 20 to 25 miles a day, depending on what we're doing. Which for 3 old blokes is all right going, it's all right going from there. And
I mean, if it was 3 power age blokes,
you'd be 50 miles a day, yeah. I should have got a taxi. Should have flown it. Yeah. So we did that. But the thing that got us was on the first walk, Prince William had written to us individually.
Wow.
And
really
thanked us for what we were doing and said how he was massively supporting what we're doing. And so we said, well, if Prince William's behind us on the first walk, could be behind us on this one. So let's just go for it. And what we decided to do, we carry these flags, and we furled up the flags as a mark of respect to Her Majesty. And we kind of did it all very low key. So we went across, did the bit in Northern Ireland. We were meant to start outside Holyrood, but that was just as the Queen's coffin was coming in there. So we spoke to the police and said, well, where can we start? We started about 1.5 miles away, and we just started the long trek south. And until the Queen's funeral, everything was put on hold. But we just kept walking very low key. It was very low key. And after the Queen's funeral, kind of the BBC then got into us again massively. And we launched the petition, because the petitions committee at the Parliament, they were fantastic, massively supportive of us. They launched it. We got to 30,000 quite quickly, 30,000 signatures. And it was a repeat of the second walk. We were supported massively by lots of politicians along route who came and walked with us from all sides of the house and from all different political persuasions, because suicide prevention absolutely unites everyone. Just a huge walk. And it took us about 30 days. We left Scotland on World Suicide Prevention Day, which was the 10th of September. And we arrived in Westminster on the 10th of October, World Mental Health Day.
Oh,
so it was really, really great. And we crossed the line. We were supported with people like the Chief Constable of British Transport Police, Lucy Dorsey, who'd been the Deputy Boss of the Met Police. She came and walked with us all the way through London. Lots of her officers have to deal with suicides on the railway. So she was massive. And we had so many charities, just loads of people supporting us. Anyhow, we got to the end and we crossed the line. And that night we went cracked just as we were in the pub as we finished. We're live on BBC Breakfast as we got across the line. We were raising money as well, but we got to over 100,000 signatures on the petition. On the petition,
Amazing.
We ended up finishing with 160,000. So
When was this last year then?
yes,
Yeah.
With 100,000 signatures, government have to consider it for debate, and so they went away, and we got an email saying, "Yeah, we're going to have a debate." So we then met the MP that was leading it, a guy called Nick Fletcher, Don Valley MP. There's another MP that was massively supportive, but lots of MPs were supportive of us. But Neil Hudson, Dr. Neil Hudson's and his MP in Cumbria, big rural health guy, vet, massively behind us. He put an early day motion in at the same time. An early day motion is for backbench MPs to sign it, to say they support basically us doing the three dads walking. And also he wants mental health first aid in workplace settings, which is brilliant. So he got cross.
We have that already, doing that.
Pardon?
We have that already, doing that. Mental health first
Not-
aid in workplace settings.
No, mandatory, not
mandatory.
So you know, like you have
Okay,
first
okay.
aiders, physical first
Well, we have
aid.
mental health first aid is at where I work.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
he wants to make it a mandatory.
Yeah, it's not mandated.
Mandatory.
Okay,
He wants
I
to have
got
it in, like you have a.
That's
a-
good. That's
yeah,
good.
which is
Yeah.
cool. So we started to meet these backbench MPs of the petitions committee. Nick Fletcher, Don Valley MP, being one of them. There's a cross-party group, and I'll lead on that, he said. And he met us, and he was exactly what he said. You know, does talking about suicide cause it? So he went away and did his research and came back the second time he met and went, "No, I'm really happy to lead on this debate. We've got to get this through. We've got to get this through." And so we had the debate in part. It's in Westminster Hall, and there's a big committee room, and you get all cross-party MPs, and they all stood up and debated, should suicide prevention be a compulsory part of the school curriculum? Every single MP got up and said yes. Every
Wow.
single MP got up and said, they told us personal stories of loved ones in their families or constituents' suicides. They all quoted the Office of National Statistics figure that I've just said, that suicide's the biggest killer of under 35s in the UK. And they all said, we've got to do something. It was summed up by the Shadow Schools Minister, and then Steve Morgan from Labour, and then Nick Gibb, the guy that had written that letter, who had met as well, summed it up from the government and said, we're doing this, that, and the other, and we're looking into this. And all the MPs afterwards, after the debate closed down, came to us and said, just keep going, chaps, just keep putting the pressure on, just keep putting the pressure on. So Neil Hudson and his MP asked a question in PMQs about, does the Prime Minister support the three dads? And it was amazing. The Prime Minister said,
Who was the PM at the time?
it's Rishi Sunak.
It was Rishi there. wasn't it?
Yeah. So it's.
I can't remember. God,
Yeah,
there's
so
so much change.
Well, that's why we had the petition, because there was so much turmoil in government. It was like, oh my God. But they asked it, Neil asked it of Rishi Sunak, the PM, and the PM responded. And we were just expecting to get a endorsement. Yeah, go for it. No, I'd love to meet the three dads. Let's sort it out.
Oh, wow.
And he invited us to number 10. So we ended up going to number 10. And at the same time, the stuff with the petition had been going on, and we'd been invited to see Gillian Keegan. Now, Gillian had been in she'd been in health and social care as a minister for, we've got suicide prevention. She'd now been promoted, and she's Secretary of State for Education.
Oh, incredible.
So she wanted to see us.
Incredible.
So we ended up going and having tea in the garden of number 10. And the first thing the PM said to us, just us and Neil Hudson, BBC were there floating around. The first thing the PM said to us was, I can't imagine, I'm the father of two young girls. Right, what can I do to help? And we sat with him for half an hour, just chewing the cud about why isn't suicide prevention on the school curriculum? Why don't we as a society...
Was it a private conversation, or was it recorded anyway?
It was private conversation, but the BBC were around there, so it's on our blog. The bits of it are.
Okay.
So yeah, there's the meeting on there, and it was all on BBC News and everything like that. And the PM was really behind us. I said to him, I said about 6,000 suicides a year, and I asked him how many people we lose on the roads every year, and every death is tragic on the roads, but we put so much effort. We lose 1,500 people ish per year on the roads. Every death is tragic. I'm not taking anything away from that. Yeah. But we put so
It
much
just
effort
highlights
in.
how much a problem suicide is. Yeah.
But we put so much effort into road safety. That's my point. Is we design cars with airbags, with seatbelts, with all the crash protection around it. We put speed limits in place. we make people have driving tests. We have DVLA to check people's health conditions. Yet we lose 4 times that amount to suicide. And it's really more than 4 times that amount. Yeah. And he was just like, oh, okay. But while we were there, Gillian Keegan popped into number 10, as you do. And, hi, Dads, how are you doing? And she kind of came down the stairs.
Did she say it like that, though?
She did. But I can't. I'm not going to do it in her. She's got a really, her Liverpudlian Scousey accent. I'm not going to do it like that.
I want you to try it.
Hey, Dads, it's me. And it was. She bless her. So the PM had just disappeared off, and she, the patio where all the rule breaking occurred at the back. She bounced through some patio doors and ran down the steps and gave us a big hug, and then spoke to us for about 30 minutes, impromptu.
Brilliant.
With this, and she, I'm meeting you in 2 weeks' time, aren't I? Yeah. So in 2 weeks' time, he went to go and sit down with her. Half-hour meeting was about an hour and a half with her senior officials, and we were just saying, how can we get... The conversation seems to have turned from should we get suicide prevention into school curriculum to how. And we've met loads of experts, so we got the thing that's set up after that, chaired now by Nick Gibb, the same minister, Nick Gibb is a real, wants, quite rightly so, wants to get all the evidence properly behind him, just to dispel all the myths that you're talking about, that talking about suicide causes suicide. So we've had loads of government experts and experts that we've found get round a table with them on a series of round tables, and there's a draft curriculum that's being produced for public consultation, which is due out any time now.
Amazing.
Which we're going to then send out. All the 160,000 people who signed our petition, the petitions committee are going to send it out to them. And our whole thing is, if we can get our young people talking about suicide prevention when they're 10, 11, 12.
Well, am I still slightly not skeptical at all, but knowledgeable of it?
Yeah,
because I think that's the
it's
key,
knowledge
isn't it? It's knowledge of it, isn't it?
Well, it's not trying to make people experts. It's trying to make people say, if you're having that S-word thought, if you're having that thought like you don't want to be here, you reach out. You're not on your own having that thought, and that's all it's about.
Exactly.
It's just about destigmatizing it.
Knowledge.
It's just about that.
Yeah.
But imagine if we can get our kids doing that when they're, young. It won't take long before that bleeds through society. And, so in 10 years' time, there'll be teachers, they'll be in all the workplaces, they'll be in the military.
Huge impact.
And that will absolutely transform. So when people are having that down time in their lives, for whatever reason, relationship breakup or just stress at work or failing at work or failing exam or whatever it is, whatever that trigger is, money problems, there's a chance that some of them will reach out, and we know that talking about suicide and more importantly suicide prevention saves lives.
It's something that's going to be measurable. Like if we are coming.
Yeah, it's fine.
So it's something you measure. When that gets brought into the curriculum, in 10 years' time, when those kids are becoming adults and they've been adulting for a while, 5 years, 6 or 7 years, you should see the suicide rates decline. You'll be able to see the fruits of your labour, and hopefully that is the case.
So we discovered this we were at a Keswick Mountain Festival. We'd been asked to talk. It was in between the two walks. It was the first time we'd spoken face to face. We'd done lots of Zoom calls with people. And we gave this talk. It was peeing it down with rain outside. So we had about 150 people in the tent. So it would have been about 2 people in the tent if it hadn't been peeing it down with rain outside. But we had 150 people in the tent, and we had lots of parents. We spoke about just the first walk. Lots of parents then took their young kids outside to see the papyrus stand. And these are kids at 8, 9, 10 saying, look, kids, if you're having thoughts like you don't want to be here, there's people that can help you. But the most... the thing that actually cut me to the core was there was a guy waiting. After we finished talking, there was a guy waiting behind. There was a group of people talking to me, slowly kind of coming forward and talking to me one-to-one. And a guy about 25, 26, 27, who was looking a bit dishevelled, kind of came to the front, and he was the last person to talk to me. He just looked me in the eye and said, I came up to Cumbria to kill myself today. I saw you were talking. I came into the tent, heard you talk. I can't go through with it now. I just can't. And he went, God, I just gave him a hug, burst into tears. He burst into tears. And then Andy and Mike, exactly the same, gave him a big hug. And the dude donated to us about 3 days later, just £10 each. But just said, thanks for that. You saved me today. And that's just by talking about suicide prevention. We've had so many emails from parents and grandparents of people that, because they've seen us, they've reached out to the charity, they've got the support from suicide prevention professionals, and 6 months later, their kids are now living a fulfilled life. They've got through that just because they reached out and sought support.
How can people help you, and how can people help push the progress on bringing it into the curriculum?
So there's us. If you want to donate, just go to Three Dads Walking online. Just Google Three Dads Walking, and and all that money just goes straight to the charity. Goes straight to Papyrus, and I say every £5 supports a call to Hopeline. That Hopeline, because the money we've raised, they got expansion plans. The charity that's now 24/7, which is perfect. And then look out for the consultation, if you like, which should be launched about this new, the public consultation that's going to be launched about the new curriculum.
How can people look out for it?
As soon as that goes live, so we'll put another link on our website.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll definitely put a link on our website.
What about social media?
Yeah, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we're on
Three Dads Walking.
Yeah, Three Dads Walking. Just
Are you
look
on
at Three
Twitter?
Dads. Yeah, X, whatever it's called. Yeah, Twitter.
X, yeah, sorry,
yeah,
Twitter.
X. Oh, you're so with it with the youth. But no, it's been we never expected to be in this position where we're trying to change government policy. You know, we literally set out 2 years ago to, like you say, do something for us on a personal level, which was so important. But it's turned into we can change society. We can help people out, and we can help our kids out. We can help the next generation out, because there's so many of them suffering.
Yeah, as terrible as the roots of what you're doing are, as terrible as the origins of it are. What you're doing is a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
You know, and it will undoubtedly have saved lives already. Well, you just explained that the gentleman was cut to kill himself, and they're just the ones you know about, and there'll be countless others that you don't know about. And if you think about when this comes into the curriculum, and in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years time, and anybody who's able to contribute and support you in it, and sees that suicide figure coming down, which undoubtedly it will, Jesus Christ, you know, it will, all the effort will have been worth it, and perhaps, you know, there'll be something something extremely positive that will have come from the three of you, the extreme heartache that you and your families have all gone through.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. And it's all the other parents we've met as well, because it was their voices that have just kind of spurred us on to go, hang on a minute, this isn't just us three, it's a societal issue that we need to address, and we do with every other risk, let's do it with this.
Yeah. Right. Keep doing what you're doing. If I can help in any way, let me know.
You're a star. Cheers, you. Lovely to be here.